up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit, and today we are doing our Kickoff Clash recap. All right, we had a lot of stuff go on this weekend. We had the East tournament, the West tournament. We're going to talk about a bunch of the big matches, obviously the end result, the teams, how they did. But first, before we do that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. All you guys have been supporting me for the last day or for the last 5 years. Thank you very much. If you're new, just stopping by, thanks a lot. I do Overwatch League content 2 to 3 times a week, depending on what's going on. Going to take a little break here. Going to do the recap, and then we're going to take a few days off. I'm going to formulate my power rankings going into the mid-season madness tournament. And then, of course, we'll get right back into the swing of things. We don't have matches until the 16th of June, so we have a little bit of time off here. And then we're going to dive right back in. But I'm going to do a little bit of content in between. Obviously, since we've seen everybody, gone through one tournament cycle, we're going to be playing on a new patch coming up. You relatively know who's good and who's not. There's going to be some teams going up and down, and it's going to be very, very weird, for sure. But let's talk about the weekend in general. I love that when they started doing these tournaments. I was on the fence about it. I'm a regular sports guy. I watched some esports before, and I like that kind of scenario that they were doing with the regular season. Yeah, we had that little stage tournaments. But these mean more now, and it was a lot. It's always a lot more fun. And with the way the new game's playing, yeah, we have teams that are good, teams that are bad. But we got to see, at least on the West side, we got to see a live event, LAN, a regular tournament, not guys sitting in their pajamas with a jersey on. Essentially, we saw the crowd in Dallas and teams some of them getting their first experience in this, and we'll talk about a lot of that too, what I thought about that. But just to me, it brings the tension that you want in competition, the clutch moments. Even in the first round, we had a couple of things, and I like the way they play out. I was on the fence, but I like the way they play out. So the Kickoff Clash on the whole, I thought it was a good tournament. You're seeing separation in the West. There are 2 tiers. There are the 1 to 4 tier teams, and then I'm going to include 5 down to 10 could possibly do anything in the mix. But the 1 to 4 teams that were in the tournament, and I included 2 teams that didn't make it in that 10. And I realize how many people are in a tournament, guys. In the tournament itself, you saw the separation in the West. You really didn't see it in the East, in my mind. I felt like going into the tournament on the East side, you could make an argument for every team that was in there to win the tournament. The West side, you kind of knew what was going to happen. Yeah, I'll root for the Mayhem. They're my team. And, I made stupid picks because I thought they were going to win a game, and I thought they could beat the Rain. I'm doing that more from the fan perspective side than actually looking at the match and going, that probably not. Even regardless of what the Rain did the week before, I wanted to make it more fun for myself because I'm rooting for the Mayhem, who didn't look bad, but they're just not on that level. So the West side, just briefly, like a brief overview of the West. Look, there's 4 teams that are better than the rest. It's the Glads, it's the Fuel, it's the Shock, and the Rain. You could probably try and establish some sort of hierarchy in the 4 other teams, but honestly, on any given day, they could beat each other. They all have flaws, and they all have weaknesses, and every team does, but they're just not as... And you saw it in the lower bracket when the unexpected couple of things happened, where you had San Francisco go down there, and Dallas go down there, and Atlanta down there. Once those teams get down there, your Justices, your Houstons, your Mayhems, they're not going to do anything against them. Justice played Mayhem. Toronto, they're not going to beat Dallas. They're not going to beat Atlanta. They're not going to beat San Francisco. It's not going to happen. Those 4 teams are going to beat each other up just as bad as the 4 teams in the bottom would beat each other up. You're starting to see some clear-cut things. Our team's going to improve? Yeah. Are there going to be metas where teams get boosted up or boosted down? Yes, that's going to happen. It's Overwatch League. That's what happens every year. There's a meta every year where one team that shouldn't be there ends up being there in one of the tournaments. It's just the way it is. I thought the live event itself was amazing. I love it when they play in front of live crowds, like I said. The crowd was electric. Dallas is a great place to have it. They're invested into the Overwatch League. The fans are great. They make a lot of noise. There's weird days in there, too. You got Thursday at 3 Eastern, so what's that, 1 p.m. on a work day? There still was a decent crowd there for the early games. You can't knock that. And I thought the presentation was great. I love what the casters, they did a great job. I think Jaws and Costa were a great team. Of course, Uber, Mr. X. Uber was like going crazy. It adds the excitement. Jaws and Costa did really well. The desk was good. I liked Necra on there, as a fill-in for Costa. They switched roles and they did a fantastic job. Each one of them did. I like where the presentation was going with that. For me, I love Uber when he gets in the high-pressure situation and it starts getting really tense and he starts screaming and saying phrases and words and going nuts, just like you are at home. I love that. And Jaws and Costa were doing the same thing. And then you had some just moments in these matches where you're just going, what just happened? And they're going crazy. The crowd's going crazy. It felt like we were almost not back to normal, but back to where we were before the 2 years of COVID, like everybody locked in a room in their pajamas. But, it was really good. I just loved how it was presented. I like the fact that they have a trophy. They get the trophy at the end. It just makes it seem like an event. Before, it was like, yay, we won. And then, like, you see a picture on Instagram or on Twitter or something like that. Hey, look, we have this trophy thing. But, yeah, the West is good. The East, unfortunately, they had to do it the way we've been doing it. But there still is a lot of emotion. And, Achilleos and Avril just knock it out of the park. Achilleos and Avril are, like, passionate. And they provide, like, the excitement, the tension. I want that. They have some fun with stuff. Avril is like doing things, and also he's like, "Oh, post bomb!" And, he's just like shouts like something. It's great. I loved it. The East tournament was fantastic. 4 teams makes it a lot less bullshit to get through, I guess. But the teams were pretty close at times, but I enjoyed that too. And I like the fact that they moved it back, the tournament, some of the tournament games, to 7:30. Before, when they were starting at like 5 in the morning, East Coast time, that was just no. I was watching all those games on replay. But I could get up at 6 because I generally have to get up early for work anyway. So I thought both tournaments were great. It was fun seeing high pressure Overwatch again on a stage, though. I mean, that was the main narrative I got. And it reminded me of how exciting this league is when you get the fans in there, you get noise, which gets the casters amped up, players get amped up or nervous, or, you can see all of the things, the tension on the stage, when they're playing, or the elation or the disappointment or whatever's going on. You had, at the end, you had Patapan crying and this and that. It was an emotional time for the dude. He played the game back in the early days. They switched to Valorant and came back and is in the league, and people were giving him crap, I myself included. He was fantastic this weekend. Gladiators were fantastic this weekend. Dynasty, my boy Prophet. I tell you guys every chance I can, the dude's the GOAT, hands down. But there were a lot of just big performances across the board. That's my overview. I'm still hyped up. I'm doing this. I just rewatched a couple of the APAC matches that I missed because, granted 6 o'clock in the morning, but I still do have to do work when I go to work. So I missed the tail end of the games there. The couple of the best games of the week were the Dragons and give me the Dragons and the Dynasty every week. Every control map goes 199. The push maps generally they have to push it a meter in overtime. They're just high tension, action packed, like on the edge of your seat crap going on when those two teams play. Not even a skill, one team's better than the other. They're both really good teams. And it's super fun to watch. I just loved it. So I'm still hyped from watching the first Shanghai Seoul match. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do an overview of the East, touch on a couple of matches, and then we're going to do an overview of the West, not the overall feel that I had watching the tournament. the matches and the whatnot. We'll just give a quick wrap up at the end. So let's talk East Tournament first, since it's on my mind. And I just watched one of the best matches that I've seen in a long time, part 1 with these two, Seoul and Shanghai. So the East Tournament, everybody went in negative on Philly, myself included, on the fence with Seoul. And, Shanghai's still the best team in your mind. And Hangzhou may have a puncher's chance in this. They looked good. And Philly came out, and honestly, Philly played almost better than they played in the first 3 matches that they had this year. They were absolutely on fire, clicking on all cylinders. Every cliche you want to use to say that a team was playing really well, they did it. And their rookies are learning. They're not as seasoned. So Philly goes in against the Spark. I of course picked Philly in this because I have faith in them. I just lost some last week. I didn't know what they were doing. They were just a little, I don't know if it was overconfidence or they were definitely over aggressive in spots. Zest and MN3 and stuff like that. And you saw some Carpe and stuff like that in this series, which is fine. Veteran, all that kind of stuff. They made their presence known. They went through Hangzhou, and then later they had the Shanghai Dragons number. So the circle of what the fuck in APAC reads as follows: Shanghai can't beat Philly, Philly can't beat Seoul, and until this afternoon, or morning, I should say, Seoul cannot beat Shanghai. It's a weird trio of events, and Hangzhou beats teams occasionally, is how the top 4 works right now in APAC. Yeah, Hangzhou didn't look bad, but they just did not look like they were ready for this yet. Philly came out, shy, and Alpha Yi, to me, he's up there with Proper as hard carry rookie guy. And along with Philly's, there's so many good rookies this year, and they all performed at a really high level too, and I was kind of impressed across the board with guys like, like I said, Alpha Yi, Proper, Zest, and then in the East you had the duo on Atlanta in OG and Ultraviolet. You had guys like Someone and Surmajed performing really well. Patapan looked good in the final. There's a lot of guys that looked fantastic. And Vindime as well. I can't. I almost forgot about him. He's making Li Jaegong look like a passive Lucio player, for crying out loud. That dude, insane. Philly has the pieces, is what I'm getting at. They can rack teams up pretty easily. They just got to find their footing, get some experience with these guys, and they've had it. Now, if you remember last year, Shanghai got buried by Dallas in the May Melee. They came back and they learned how to play in some of these formats. And I think that's what Philly's going through. You got to remember, they beat one team in Shanghai badly that is the champion, has all-stars all around, and they've been together for over a year now. Almost 2 full seasons, some of the guys. When you're talking Lip, Flata, Void, Izayaki, that core has been together for a bit. And Philly's got a whole new team, so they performed really well. Hangzhou, disappointing though. And one of the things that I was on the fence about, kind of, their supports, they're lacking something. I know they're going to be good. They need to work some things out. And I'm not backtracking on them. They had a bad performance this week. But I'm still standing by. They're one of the better teams in that division. And it has nothing to do with the amount of teams, really. They're a good team. They're fairly stacked. Bernard looked good when he was in there. The guy that Irony and Super Rich are getting picked off here and there. A lot of the early deaths. And yeah, they're playing teams that run dive. Especially when you're playing Seoul. Oh, my God. They run that dive with Winston and Tracer so perfectly. And I said this multiple times from watching their games. Prophet and Smurf together, when they do that Winston and the Tracer or even the Genji, they are so good together. It's a masterclass on how to run 5v5 Winston dive. It really is when those two guys are going. And it takes that level of skill that those two guys have. But Yeah, Hangzhou's got to work on some things. They're not terrible. They're going to be back in these tournaments. In the foreseeable future, I don't see a Valiant or a Guangzhou or Chengdu coming up and knocking them out. I think we're going to see these teams ranked in different orders as we go on. Maybe you get a meta where a team like a Chengdu can punch up. I don't think you're going to see, maybe you see one of the other teams in there. But I do think it's a good sign that they got into a tournament. They did not get into one last year. I think the last time they were in any kind of playoff form was in 2019 when they came in 4th in the Overwatch League. That was a GOAT season. There's a lot of different parts now. They got here, they got their feet wet, and they got trounced twice. But I think this is just a learning experience. It's no loss is a good loss in my opinion. Losses sting, but they got beat so bad. It's like getting hit by a bus. I don't even think they're going to remember being in the tournament. First round went kind of as everybody saw it. Shanghai, maybe not everybody. Seoul and Shanghai had a banger of a match. That match was so tight. And you had big players making big plays. And Who Are You was making big plays. But Prophet and Smurf and Vindime were making big plays. And you had Lip doing stuff. And it was just amazing to watch. 5 maps, and like I said, every control map, it seemed like it went all 199. Maybe there was 1 or 2. The first map, Oasis map, Shanghai did do them dirty, but there still were some moments where Seoul could have clutched out a win on that map. And there was a couple of instances where, you saw it and you're like, Shanghai's getting ready to roll them. But Seoul came back on Midtown and on 66 and put the clamps down on them. Shanghai's really good on Toronto, and a lot of it hinges on the push map. Is Fleta playing that Reaper? He's an amazing player too, and he's just so dangerous on that hero. He's you probably could call him the best Reaper in the league. Not that everybody gets into that, but he's been getting used a lot, and he is really good and knows when to time things and just plays the character extremely well. And it's difficult on that map if you have someone playing at that level on Reaper, just ripping through you anytime you go near the bot, or teleporting up into those windows and stuff in the high ground and just terrorizing your support line. Whether he's getting kills or not, they still have to stop focusing on healing the team up and doing damage and that kind of thing. They have to, the Lucio has to come back and peel and all the kind of things that for the Ana, and it's difficult. And Fleta is amazing at it. But that match was one of the best matches of the weekend in the East. If it wasn't for Seoul and Shanghai playing, actually, they all would have been kind of dogs. And then you had Seoul goes down in the losers bracket. They bury Hangzhou. Philly, who has Shanghai's number, kills them. And then we get to today, where I would call this one of the best matches I've seen kind of ever in the Overwatch League. Maybe not kind of. High pressure situation, elimination, tournament life on the line, go to the finals to play the Fusion. And my boy Prophet just stepped up. He had a rough first map, and you can even say the first match against the Dragons, he wasn't at top level for him. There were glimpses of it. He was making big plays. But boy, did he show up in this match. And right when they needed him most, several times, he came through and did things. He single-handedly won this match on Ilios. The match is, tight as could be. Kind of was going to form. And, I was thinking Seoul might have 3-1 them after what they did on Gibraltar, where Seoul was looking kind of iffy, and then Smurf and Prophet picked it up. And throughout the whole match, Vindime was terrorizing the Dragons. And it happened in the first match, too. There was one point, I think I heard Avril say on 66, he had more kills than all of the Dynasty. He had 12 at that point during that map. And the Dynasty didn't even have 12 kills yet. So, yeah, he was playing really well. But I don't know if some of you guys might not have saw it. But on the Dragons took them. It started to look dire for Seoul, and then Prophet just put his foot down and said, not fucking today, not again. He hit a double pulse bomb on Lighthouse. It looked like the Dragons were going to flip the point. He hits a double pulse bomb. I think Who Are You might have did a duplicate into Tracer, and he was running around the point. And mind you, it's 99.99. He hits a double pulse bomb, takes out 2 players, racks somebody else up, and then the rest of the squad, I think it was Smurf might have yeeted in there towards the end, and they cleaned up. It was frickin' amazing. And then on Ruins, they just owned them. But that was the lower bracket match, and then you're going, holy crap, if this is this good, Seoul, Philly should be amazing. And Seoul cleaned their clock. Holy, that was a just good old-fashioned ass-whooping. And I don't think it has to do with Philly's skill level or any of that kind of nonsense or whatever trope you want to throw in there, meme thing. Buy into what you want to buy into. I just think Seoul was better today. They were on a super high. They had Prophet like so focused. Like in that match, you always see Prophet and he just has like this kind of look of he's playing the game. I never saw him look that focused before. Maybe in the finals in 2018. Even then, he still was like joking around and laughing and doing what he does. But they went into that match against Philly, and it was over before you could bat an eye. As soon as Seoul buried them on Lijiang Tower, I knew it was done. The way they were playing was the 3 things watching the match that I wrote down. Smurf and Prophet and Vindime. They could not handle those 3. Fitz had moments, Creative had moments, but the core problem that they could not deal with, unfortunately for them, was Smurf, Prophet, and Vindime. There were many times where the Prophet just shut everything down, and he outplayed Zest. And I think it was one of those things where it was like the old master just beating the shit out of the student, kind of doing that kind of thing. He looked so good. The rest of the team looked good, and they deserve this win. The whole history of Seoul, I'm not going to go over that. You guys who listen to the show know my thoughts generally on Seoul. See Houston, same thing. It was a well-deserved win. They played flawlessly in the final. Prophet deservingly got the MVP of the tournament. You could have made an argument for Smurf or Vindime on their end. Seoul got their first tournament win in team history. Good for them. It's a long time coming, a long time promised. They're, like I've said in the past, they're like the Yankees from 2008 until now, or the 1980s Yankees. The team with the storied history, the kind of like the Cowboys, that kind of Dallas Cowboys sort of scenario. They're America's team, the whole thing. Seoul is, we're based in Seoul, the heart of, where the largest community of Overwatch players are. All this stuff, this is our game, our town, the whole thing, and they fail every time, except for this one. So good on them. I think that this division is going to be up for grabs, and I feel for Philly fans because you guys have come in second so many times. The way this team is set up right now, you guys are going to win one, probably this year, and hey, if you don't win one until you win the last one this year, that's all that matters. But you got a lot of competition. But I do think they have a base of a team that is going to do really well, better than I thought they were going to. Seoul, I thought they would be second, but Shanghai's flubbing it up. And speaking of Shanghai, I don't know what's going on with this team other than the one thing I noticed is they missed that tank synergy thing. You could say that about Atlanta at times, maybe, but boy, having Void and Fate on the field at the same time was one of their recipes, and they might need to go back and figure some things out because Void doesn't look great by himself all the time, and Fate has moments where he's not great, and they're not clutching out fight wins like they did before. Lee Jae-gon's a little off. Izayaki is probably the steadiest player on the team besides Lip, who's honestly carrying this team right now as far as he can. Fleta does well when he's in. Who Are You does phenomenal when he's in too. It's just there's something missing on this team. Maybe they need a little work. And I know there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and that screws with your mental. I get that. but they've had some time. Things are starting to clear up. They're lifting bans and stuff like that in China. So maybe they're going to be able to focus, take a week off, and figure out what they're doing wrong and reset. They're still good. They still went 5-1, no matter how quote-unquote bad we said they played. They just didn't have a good tournament. They didn't have a terrible tournament. They just finally got beat by Seoul. Seoul didn't fuck anything up this time. All right, we talked about the East. Now let's talk about the West. So in the West region, there was really only one, I guess you could call it a compelling match. It was the first match between San Francisco and Washington. It was 3-2. It was the closest match we had. And I think a lot of that had to do with, for one, Decay was playing and invested for Washington. Like we always talk about, when he's invested and he's there and he's doing his thing, Washington's tough to beat. Also, San Francisco, young, inexperienced, on stage. I think there were some jitters there. There might have been a little bit for Washington, but it didn't seem that way because I think a lot of these guys knew what to expect going in. And really, from there on out, you could see the division of, like we were talking about in the beginning of the episode, your actual 1-4 teams, not the seeding in the tournament, but Glad's, Dallas, Atlanta, and San Francisco compared to Justice, Mayhem, Toronto, Houston. And it was a pretty decent gap, really, if you think about it. That being said, the Gladiators did the speed run. They came in, and I think if you look back, they were trying a lot of different things, trying to perfect a couple of different comps so they could be more versatile, because they had the players to do it. It just took a little bit to piece it all together and to get it to work really, really tightly, really, really well, so that it doesn't matter. There wasn't a situation where you got into, like with a couple of the other teams, where you say, well, if we pick X map, they're screwed. That doesn't happen with the Gladiators, with the way they run their comps. They, in fact, can dictate things if they put other teams into a position, or they get into a position where they can run Circuit Royale better than any other team. Because you put in Space, he plays Sigma, you have Kai, your support line's fantastic, and they all can play a diverse amount of heroes, diverse enough. They are skilled on several different comps. So they're very hard to beat, very hard to figure out as far as what they're really, really good at. One of the things is just let Funny Astro and Kevster do what they do. Funny Astro on Lucio in the final was insane. He got player of the match. I mean, he was just all over the place. As much as we talked about Vindime, he was doing a lot of work, and he was unbelievable in all regards to his Lucio play. And it was good to see that. But what I'm getting at with the Gladiators on the whole of the West tournament is you can't pinpoint them as like Dallas, say. If you look at Dallas, teams got into matches with them, and they said, if we get them on dive, they are less scary than they are when they have the Zarya Reaper or whatever the Zarya comp that they're going to run is. So they have answers, the Gladiators, that is, to all of the other comps, and they're versatile enough on several different comps themselves to make it really hard to pinpoint certain things on how to beat them. And they can counter you a lot better. And it just goes to show you that coaching does matter. And I do think that Face and Unter bring a whole different direction to this team. And Unter also brings confidence, and you might call it cockiness. I don't. I call it confidence. You saw them after the match, kind of, Reiner's, I guess, in the back said something along the lines of, I was just disappointed the match wasn't closer. They just had the answers, and Unter's out there saying, oh, that was easy, or I thought teams were going to, he was just doing his Unter thing, and it bleeds into the team like it did last year with the Reign. And he's got the Gladiators feeling this vibe. Basically, he has them believing in what they can do. And I'm not saying other coaches don't do that. I'm not saying DP didn't do that. But he's got them on a different level. And they're just looking super, super good. But let's back off the Gladiators for a second and talk about some of the other stuff. I don't think Dallas played bad. I know it reflects that they did because they lost. They got knocked out. However you want to slice that. They were in front of the home crowd. They did take care of business when they had to. It's just the Gladiators showed, even though they beat the Gladiators 3-2, they had a formula to beat them. It's just they hadn't perfected it yet. I know I said backing off the Gladiators, but Dallas looked fantastic, I thought. Other than, unfortunately, having to play the Gladiators. Because if you look what they did, they destroyed the Mayhem, the Shock, and the Reign. They just couldn't beat, and Toronto to start. They just couldn't beat the Gladiators. It's really what it boiled down to. And Hanbin, I don't want to say this, he's so much better than right now. When they run that Zarya comp, they look so much better than when they run Dive with Fearless. And it's odd because they were a team that kind of thrived on running Dive before, but they have this comp down. I like the way they play it, and they play it so well, and it's mostly because of him. But like I had said previously, certain teams can figure it out and beat them. The Shock went in there, I think, and they thought they were just going to, DPS diff them, and they didn't. Because Dallas, like I said, Dallas can play that style with the Zarya almost on every map, minus a couple. But I thought that they looked like the second best team in the tournament to me. Reign and Shock, they both had their moments where they looked good. And look, those two teams are going to bury the Mayhems, the Justices, the Houstons of the world. The Shock are young, and the Reign have experience, and they're just going to take care of those teams that aren't on the mechanical skill level that they are. The Shock it's taking a little bit of time to come around in big matches. They didn't have any big matches in the regular season. This is the first pressure situations we saw them in, and Washington took them to the brink, and they lost badly to Dallas. Like I said with Hangzhou, losses aren't good. I'm not a good loss person, but you do learn from them. You learn from losing in these pressure situations and what you need to go back and do and rework. And a lot of that, I think, too, with the Shock was nerves. It's a new experience, and I still think they're one of the best teams in the West, proving me wrong earlier in the season or in my preseason power rankings when I said they were probably somewhere around the Mayhem. They're way better than those teams. Mayhem, Houston's not better than them. Toronto's not better than them. They're in the, like I keep saying, the four separated teams. And I think the more that they play, Violet's looking fine on these heroes that he never played before. In Lucio, a little bit of doing. I mean, obviously he's got cracked aim, so he can play things like BAP and stuff like that. He's fine on those, but you're seeing a little bit more stuff from them. I do think comp-wise, they were leaning on that Moira a little bit more than I would have liked to see. I personally like Anna a little bit more right now, at least on this patch. Maybe in the next iteration after we get the nerfs and all that stuff in the midseason madness tournament, I might say, all right, Moira, I like her in certain situations. Don't get me wrong, but Anna has the nade, sleep dart, and you have Nano. Those are three key things right now in this 5v5 world that you need, like almost all the time. Unless, like I said, if you're doing like maybe a thing where you want BAP in there and you get the immortality field and that kind of thing, all right, yeah, I'll give that to you. San Francisco just needs to, and Krusty will work on it. They'll be in top form. They'll be back in this position again. I don't know if necessarily one seed, but they're going to be in the mix on the top half of the West. Reign, I think they had a good tournament too. They have their moments where they just get outplayed, it seems like. I don't know if they get boomed or whatever. It seems like if they get whacked around a little bit, and it's not that they're not resilient, I feel like there could be tilting or something because it just goes downhill fast with the Reign. But like I said, they're still better than the other four teams in the tournament in that separation. As far as those teams go, they're kind of interchangeable depending on... Honestly, I don't know what's going on with the Justice. Decay played in the first match and then did not play at all against the Mayhem. I don't know if it's Decay being Decay. I don't know if they benched him. I don't know if he's fighting with people or he's sick or whatever. I haven't seen anything yet, but you take those four teams. You take Florida, Washington, Defiant, Houston, and you could kind of rank a hierarchy in that maybe say Houston's better than the other three. And, Mayhem, Toronto on the same level. Justice maybe a little behind all the other three of the teams in that little grouping. But, depending on Decay and what's going on with that. But they all just seem to, they can beat each other on any given day. Toronto can beat Houston. Houston can beat Toronto, etc. and what have you, as far as that circle of life goes on in mid-pack Overwatch League West Division. I just don't think when they get into a tournament situation, it would shock me if they beat a team like the Gladiators, the Fuel, San Francisco, Atlanta. Those teams are on a different level. I want to see that because I want to see a little bit of parity go on, but you can see the separation in the West bracket. As far as the championship match goes, it was a masterclass by the Gladiators on how to be versatile. They played Dallas to a T. They knew exactly what Dallas was going to do, and they took it to them. Dallas had no chance in this. Much like I said, as soon as Seoul came out and won that first map against the Fusion, I felt the same way about Dallas and the Gladiators. The Gladiators were just one step ahead of them in everything they did. They were always ahead of Dallas with the ultimate cycling, it felt like. Nano was always online sooner. And a lot of times Dallas had players, and, Hanbin, he had a rough match. A couple of guys, like there would be times where you're going, he hasn't even gotten grav yet. Or, they've gotten one grav only in this match, or map. It was just rough watching it. They, at points, did well enough, but really, the Gladiators just proved that they're the best team in the West. And I had Dallas winning this. I thought it was going to be a home field advantage thing for them. But you know what? Sometimes you lose. It's just the Gladiators had everything going. They were a step ahead of every team in this tournament, and a lot of it was coaching, like I said earlier with them. Dallas, I don't think you have to say Dallas has things to quote-unquote work on. Maybe other than being a little bit more versatile. And yes, you run the one comp extremely well. You want to be able to run other comps at a high level so you don't get pigeonholed into one thing. And then if you get a team that knows how to beat you, to get you out of that one comp, and you are forced to switch onto something you're not comfortable on because you're getting owned, and the only way to counter it is the other comp. You see where I'm going with this. You got to be more versatile. Not necessarily, the Gladiators took it to another level, and they're versatile in pretty much everything, which makes them very scary for the rest of the year. But Dallas is right up there with them. And the Shock will be, and the Reign will be, in my opinion, as we go through this. But well-deserved win by the Gladiators in this. Funny Astro got MVP in the championship game. I can't go against that, or player of the match, or whatever it was. You could have given it to Patty Pan, who came around in the final match, and he showed us what he's made of and what he can do. He was absolutely electric on the Soldier 76. There were times when, and a lot of it was the way the team played together, sure. But you have to make the shots. You have to make the right calls. He wasn't yeet flanking, doing weird shit with 2 HP, trying to save the match. They played together. They cleaned up some of that stuff that was plaguing them earlier. And just on the whole, Reiner was really good. Shu, the other guy in the support line, who I didn't even really spend any time on, was amazing as well. I mean, there was one, I think it was against San Francisco. He had a sleep dart from frickin' 3 miles away and a nade. I think it was San Francisco. I would have to watch it again, but it was ridiculous. It was on Kings Row. I was like, he predicted where, I believe, maybe it was Dallas. I think it was Dallas in the first match. He predicted where Fielder was going to peek out of the window. And then, anyway, it was just insanely good. And overall, the Gladiators just outclassed everybody. There's no other way to put it. They gave up, the one map they lost was to Dallas, and that stands to reason, because Dallas is a fantastic team, and they can only take one map out of 7 that they played against them, or 8. So that shows you what level the Gladiators were on. But that's going to be it for my West wrap-up. That's going to do it, guys. We got our champions from both sides of the league. We have the Seoul Dynasty winning the East bracket, LA Gladiators winning the West bracket, and it was a fantastic weekend. We had a live event. It was great seeing it, a meaningful live event. I can't wait for the next one. I wish they could do the mid-season madness. There is also Midtown Madness as well. But thanks a lot for joining me. All your support's greatly, greatly appreciated as always. If you've been here 1 day or 5 years, thank you very much. Your support's greatly, greatly appreciated. If you're new and you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you very much. If you could please hit a like, hit a subscribe, all the YouTube jazz, that would be fantastic. Helps me out in the algorithms, and then we get more people in here talking more about Overwatch League, and it'll be fun. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody stay safe, have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you on the next one.